everyone for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this panel is the people versus the Jedi Order. So a class action suit has been filed against the Jedi Order and the plaintiffs from the Outer Rim, the Confederacy of Independent Planets, and the Order of the Sith Lords are calling for the Jedi Order to be disbanded. So this is an interactive panel. Hopefully that was obvious for the description. From the description, you guys are going to be counselors for the plaintiffs and the defense. So this is our first time trying something like this. So just given the amount of time, what we're gonna just do is allow people to just raise your hand, and we'll call on you, and then you will give your argument either for or against. And we'll just go kind of as much as we can until maybe 10 minutes till to give our judges an opportunity to make a verdict. So just laying some ground rules here. Every fan is welcome. We don't care how you got into Star Wars, what types of Star Wars you like, it does not matter. If you're a fan of Star Wars, you are welcome here. So again, this panel is interactive, but please be respectful to each other. Please be respectful to us. Disagreements are okay, but disparagements are not. We will not accept anyone disparaging anything, including us or Star Wars as a whole. If it's canon, it counts. We don't care. If it's in there, if it's in the books, if it's in the TV shows, if it's in the movies, that makes it canon. We don't care if you like it or not. If it's canon, it counts. So when you're making your arguments, please make your arguments about the story and the characters, not the creators and the actors. It's about the actual story and content of Star Wars. And lastly, no rants, no diatribes, no monologues. Keep it to the argument at hand, not about your feelings. All right, so these are just some examples of arguments that will be acceptable arguments. So if you're arguing for, you could say, the Jedi Order brings peace to the galaxy. You know, it's perfectly fine. That is your perspective, but it's a respectful way to present that. Or if you're against, you think they should be disbanded, you can say, the Jedi Order are beholden to the whims of the Galactic Senate. It's perfectly fine. Everything in there keeps it to the story of Star Wars. You can say, forcing suppression of emotion breeds resentment, what makes Jedi susceptible to becoming Sith. Again, it keeps it to what is contained in Star Wars. Arguments that are not acceptable. The Jedi have cool ships. I agree wholeheartedly, but that is an opinion. Midichlorians are stupid. We don't care. It's canon, so it counts. Qui-Gon Jinn is the best Jedi of all time. Harrison has heard me say that multiple times, but I acknowledge it is my opinion, so it does not count. The pacing of the Phantom Menace was dull. I've heard a lot of people who are fans of the original series say that. I don't care. That's your opinion. You have to keep it to the content of the story. Okay, now we're going to meet the court staff. So, my name is Robin. I am a huge Star Wars fan. If you've ever stopped by Ultimate Comics in Germany, you probably heard me yap your ear off about 5 minutes if you pick up a Star Wars comic. I'm going to let Harrison introduce himself.
I'm Harrison, and I also like Star Wars quite a bit. Yeah, it's a thing that I feel is very special to a lot of people, and I'm very excited to talk about it, or to have you all talk about it.
And I actually skipped a step. So all of us are members of a group called Color of Fandom. So we are a local social club for geeks here in the Triangle area. So the main reason that we exist is for people who are part of a marginalized identity to feel like they can talk about how their identity intersects with their fandom and how it impacts their fandom and vice versa. We are welcome to all. We are a safe space for all, but that is one of the tenets of our organization and why our organization was founded.
I'm Deborah. I'm one of the impartial Star Trek judges. I mean, I watch Star Wars, but I'm not like it through osmosis. But I grew up born into a Trek household.
I'm Donna. I'm also one of the judges. All I have to say is to live long and prosper.
Yeah, so as you can see, so Harris and I are, so as they mentioned, Deborah and Donna are going to be our judges. So they are impartial because they don't watch Star Trek and as much. I'm sorry. As you can see.
Sorry. Disparaging me like that.
I'm sorry. So they don't watch Star Wars as much as we do, but they are geeks and fans, so they are going to be our impartial judges. Harrison and I have too much of an emotional attachment to Star Wars, so we cannot be judges. So we are court staff. Harrison is going to be our fact checker. So if you make a statement that sounds a little bit right, but may not be true, so Harrison is going to check that, and if it's incorrect, we will have to have it stricken from the record. I will be the court bailiff if you make an argument that doesn't meet one of the rules that we previously stated, such as, too much opinion. I will have to inject and have you rephrase your statement or something of that matter. Alrighty, so we lost one of our judges. Alrighty, so hopefully we'll have her back soon, but let's go ahead and get started. So who's first? Anybody want to make a statement? Thank you, brave soul in the front. I was worried that this is going to happen. No one's going to want to speak up. So first, for the disbanded, or say it again, for the defense or for the, what is it, the plaintiff, for the prosecution?
Prosecution that I'd like to present some evidence as to why the Jedi Order should be disbanded.
All right, make a case.
I would like to reference an incident that occurred with an individual by the name of Anakin Skywalker.
Can everyone hear him okay?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So bring the mic around.
All right, I would like to reference an incident that took place with an individual known as Anakin Skywalker. He was not only taken from his home to be a Jedi at a very young age, but what I would like to present to the court is that they would say that he was someone that had a lot of power. And then, when he began to go through some very emotional trauma with the loss of his mother, they provided him no support, told him to suppress his emotions. And as a result of that, that led to him joining the dark side, because he constantly was told to suppress those emotions, never to deal with them. He was always told it leads to a path to the dark side, but was never also trusted to avoid doing that, or given the tools to be successful. And then even after he lost his master, they put him with someone that wasn't truly a master himself, but was promoted to that, who was not ready yet to take that on. And then the last piece of evidence I will provide is that when he became aware that the senator was a Sith and that something needed to be done, they told him to sit down and not be a part of it because he was too close. So their hypocrisy throughout the universe is part of the reason why they need to be disbanded, because we can't trust them at all, and they take children from our
So that argument seemed to have a lot more support than we thought it was going to. Alrighty, anyone else? Who's next? Who's next?
You can do it. We're all friends here. Come on.
Bueller. All right, yeah.
Anakin was in slavery at the beginning, and what else?
So your argument is for the prosecution, for the plaintiff?
I came in late, I'm not gonna lie, I missed half of it. So yeah, I'm gonna be defending the Jedi. I believe they should stay. You know, the argument is based off of one case, one major case, but on the other hand, they had, how many years of peace? 10,000 years of peace, and then they came back, gave more peace. I take that. That seems like a pretty good deal to me. Like,
So any other thoughts? So are you for the plaintiffs or for the defendant?
For the prosecution.
Okay.
I have 2 words. Pong Krell. Pong Krell?
From Clone Wars?
Yes.
I know.
Pong Krell.
Impartial.
That's all I gotta say.
Impartial, but 100%.
Could you explain that for the benefit of the
like-
judges?
Oh, not who he is, but what happened.
Okay, so he's like this big 4-armed, ugly frog guy, and he's
So what happened with Krell, and so you're speaking specifically about what he did with the
clones.
Yeah,
With the
yeah,
clones.
Yeah. So speak specifically about what he did to the clones on the planet.
He basically, like, he was supposed to lead his guys, and he just, like, threw them into the fire. He was like, just get shot. Just let them all die. It was terrible. And he was supposed to be a good guy, supposed to be a Jedi, but he didn't even try. It was terrible. It was...
So if the judges will allow for me to add some clarifying details, okay. So this portion of the story that our prosecutor is referring to takes place during the Clone Wars. So a battalion of clone troopers is deployed to a planet with their Jedi general is General Krell. Captain Rex said to him, these strategies that you have us implementing feel very dangerous. I'm not sure that these are the best moves to make for the battle at hand. He ignored them, told them to go forth anyway, and it was later discovered that he deliberately put them in harm's way for them to be basically murdered by their opponents. And it was uncovered that he was actually going to be defecting to the Sith, and he deliberately put them in harm's way so that they could be murdered. He was acting as a Jedi general at the time that he made those orders.
Can we ask a clarifying?
Yeah, you can ask any questions you want.
And you know they're going to sound real stupid.
No questions from anyone. No questions are stupid questions. Even the audience can ask questions if you need to. But speaking to the mic.
Are clones Jedi? That's how much I don't know.
No, that's no worries.
Okay.
We're not expecting you to know. That's what we're here for. Did you want to say? You want me to cover? Okay. So during the Clone Wars, the Kaminoans made millions of clone troopers from one person, Jango Fett, and these people were deployed through the Clone Wars under commands of Jedi generals. So they would be deployed across the galaxy for various battles. I won't get into those because hopefully our plaintiffs our prosecutors and defense lawyers will make other arguments to those, but they were deployed under our Jedi generals across the galaxy through different battles. So different clone battalions had different experiences under different Jedi generals. For instance, Anakin was a Jedi general as well, and General Krell was a Jedi general. All right, anyone else? Oh, prosecution or defense?
against the Jedi Order. I don't know which one that is. So they're very quick to turn on each other. So in the Clone Wars show, you see Ahsoka, she gets charged for murder, but they believe that she did it and she didn't. And they are very quick to rush through a trial process, through push of the Senate. And even though they offered her a spot back, she realized that they weren't gonna protect her, so she left permanently.
Thank you. So judges, did you need any other details on that? Okay. want to share, Harrison? Or want me to? Harrison, you got some time. Okay, all right. That's true. I'm a big fan of Clone Wars. Okay, so towards the end of, I shouldn't say that. It was the end of the show, not specifically Clone Wars. So, Ahsoka Tano was Padawan to Anakin Skywalker. Do you know what a Padawan is? Okay. Okay. No worries. This is totally fine. So,
I watched Star Wars. Donna has not at all.
So Padawan is basically a learner. It's the next phase beyond being a youngling. So we had our first prosecutor talk about when Anakin was taken from his mother. He became a youngling and then a Padawan, and then you become a Jedi Knight. So Ahsoka Tano was Padawan to Anakin Skywalker. She was at one point during the Clone Wars framed for murder. So so during her trial, the Jedi Order concluded that she was guilty and that she would have to be punished for her crimes. She knew that she was innocent. Of course, we're watching the show. She's a point of view character. We know that she's innocent. So she decides to run so that she can try to gather evidence to prove her innocence. And this was another point of contention as well. I guess, can I bring this into evidence since it wasn't specifically stated? How Anakin responded?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was a very emotionally difficult point for Anakin as well, because he had very strong emotional ties to Ahsoka. So it kind of pulled him in two directions, trying to decide whether or not he should follow the orders of the Jedi Order or protect this Padawan, who he had a strong emotional connection to. Any other questions at this point from either our audience or the judges? Okay. All right. We got an argument coming up?
Not an argument, but isn't this a moot point? Were the Jedi completely eradicated at the end of the movies, and any attempts to bring them back were ended in catastrophe?
This trial takes place towards the end of the Clone Wars.
Okay.
Kind of right. So Order 66 has not happened yet.
Okay.
That's where we are in the timeline.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. So we got him, and then I saw a hand in the back as well next.
Just wanted to redirect and add another piece of evidence with Ahsoka.
And the hypocrisy of the Jedi. So the Jedi like to stand for peace and law and order. That was mentioned. However, they tried to assassinate a sitting senator. They did not have evidence to support that they had circumstantial evidence that the senator was participating in dealings with some very bad individuals.
Which senator?
Palpatine. Yeah, they had circumstantial evidence. He needed to stand trial.
You guys know who Palpatine is? Okay.
Yeah, he needed to stand trial. However, when he began to defend himself, when they came to take him, and they should have, when they tried to take him into custody, they tried to kill him. Even when Anakin tried to stop him, tried to stop Mace Windu. Now that is supposed to be a Jedi Master who sits on the council that makes these decisions. That is supposed to be for a Jedi group that's supposed to protect people. But he was going to use murder. Same thing happened with Ahsoka Tano, quick to judgment. The hypocrisy of the Jedi and their willingness to go to war or murder or whatever means they must be disbanded.
Thank you, prosecutor. Okay. So I think I saw a hand in the back. Yep. So we got one, then two. The young. Oh, questions from the judges, and then we'll have you. So, okay, go ahead. No? Okay.
No? Okay. Can I add one thing to the previous point?
Sure, and then we'll have the.
We are going to allow the term assassination even though they said they were going to arrest him, Mace Windu specifically says he's too dangerous to be kept alive.
Thank you for the clarification. So are you for the prosecution? For the defense, all right.
I'd like to make an objection to the previous testimony about the murder of the stormtroopers.
For the General Frill?
Yes,
Okay.
from the Jedi General, because the Jedi General had intent to damage the character and the structure of the Jedi Order. So I think that testimony and those actions should be struck from the record against the Jedi Order.
All right, so a question first, I guess, for our court clerk. At the time, he was still officially a Jedi Master and a Jedi General, so would you...
He was a sleeper agent. Right.
Mm.
At that point, he had already agreed to work for the Confederacy. Right. So I agree with
Fair.
you.
Okay. So our court clerk will allow it. Thank you. All righty, I think I saw, did you have your hand up, young man? Okay, if you can think about it if you'd like. Okay, all right. So you for the prosecution or the defense?
I was thinking prosecution.
Okay, that's good.
So, I was going to agree with what he said because, like, what they were trying to do, they're just going by their rules when some of those rules cannot be followed by specific people. Like, some people have things with them that make them unable to follow those rules. So in a way, it's not the greatest rule set.
Great argument. All right. So a set of rules that are not really implementable. All right, I think we saw a hand over here. Yep, okay. Okay. Prosecution or defense? And then we have one over here.
Defense and an objection to his points. So when they went in to arrest Senator Palpatine, when they said they were going to arrest him in the first place, and then Palpatine fought back, it killed like 5 Jedis. So he resisted arrest. And to the point where...
Sorry, question. But does that negate their actions, though? The outcome doesn't negate the intent of their actions. What do you think, clerk?
I think they didn't request anything from the Senate. Even though he was the leader of the Senate at the time, there are thousands of systems that they are on paper supposed to answer to. And they are supposed to get the go-ahead even in wartime. They didn't do that.
Okay. So you're saying that the action is more important than the outcome. So regardless of the fact that the Jedi themselves suffered losses, it's because the action that the Jedi took.
Were acting outside of the law when they attempted the arrest of him.
Gotcha. Okay. Does the audience able to hear that? Okay. All right. And then, did you have another point?
It's a great
No. Okay.
Just kill 5 Jedis.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, that's why we bring things into legal arguments so that we can discuss them. Yeah.
Anakin's a separate trial.
All right. Do we have I think we had another hand in the back. Yep. Okay. Come on.
Just like to object to the last objection on the grounds that Jedi clearly have the hemorrhaging problem. The emotional regulation rule is clearly an issue.
You said they have. I'm sorry. What kind of? Would you mind coming to the front?
Yeah, sure. And I'm totally gonna go the wrong way. I'm so sorry. They clearly have like a defection problem.
So they have a defect.
Multiple defectors.
They've had multiple Jedi who want to defect. Obi-Wan himself at one point said that had his girlfriend Satine asked him to leave the Jedi Order, he would. Anakin clearly had his little spat with the Jedi Order. Ahsoka had left the Jedi Order. I think the best of their best leaving kind of says that there was issues. Qui-Gon was known to not play by the rules. So yeah, I think anybody who takes a child from enslavement without giving them proper therapy and forces them to fight their PTSD without any love and attachment is not a good thing.
All right. Any questions so far from our judges? Okay. All righty. Okay. You in the back and then you?
I think she was the court.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Did I miss a hand? Okay. Sorry about that. Come on up. Thank you. For prosecution or defense?
This is for prosecution,
All right.
and I'm not an expert,
No worries,
but
we
my,
know.
right, but my understanding is that the Republic was overly dependent on the Jedi for their military support, so that the Jedi were ineffective, because in Episode 3, once the Jedi are gone, the Republic immediately collapses. So they're just not, it's just not a good system. They need more broad-based support, military support, than the Jedi with their small numbers can provide.
So your stance is that more of the systems should be allowed to have some level of military independence
Right.
to defend themselves.
The Senate needs broader support than the Jedi can provide.
Gotcha. Okay, understand. And in fairness, there was also that's how Saw and Steela Guerrera had to be trained during the Clone Wars by the Jedi, because no one on their planet, and there was another world, I forget their names, also had to be trained by the Jedi Order.
The Republic did fall first. Order 66 was given after he had established that he was going to turn it into an empire. So that was the first legal action that the Emperor took, was eliminating the Jedi. Just getting the order straight.
But does that negate her point that most of the
No, it just wasn't like, I don't think it's quite fair to say that the destruction of the Jedi triggered the fall of the Republic. The Senate voted to
Gotcha.
disband the Republic.
Gotcha. Okay. Alrighty. So to clarify the 2 points there, so the Jedi Order, your point is that the Jedi Order provide basically policing and military throughout the galaxy without them being able to have any type of defense and independently of their own systems. And your clarification is that the transition from the Republic to the Empire was a decision that was made before the disbandment of the Order.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. Alrighty. Got those. Okay, so then I think you and then you, right? Mm-hmm. You time check?
No, we're good.
We're good. Okay. Thank you. Prosecution or defense?
I'm for the defense. Okay, so the prosecution has had some really great points today. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to justify some of the things the Jedi Order has done. But if we don't have them, who protects us from the Separatists?
Well, I think that lends to the previous point, right? Is that the independent systems didn't have their own, they should have had their own ability to protect themselves before. Do you have a counter argument?
So, I can't remember what the species is called. The flying one with kind of like the elephant trunk.
The species that enslaved and the guy who enslaved and his
Yeah.
sister. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and they captured the Zillows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So their planet was going to be taken over by separatists. Their leader was going to be killed without the interference of Yoda.
Are you talking about
Toydarians, right?
Toydarians? Yeah. So when you're talking about the interference of Yoda, are you talking about when they went to the planet with the Zillow beast so that they could extract the energy from the gas?
At the beginning of the Clone Wars series.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think first episode.
Do you recall that? Okay. So clarify. Do you need clarifying details? Okay. All right, and then we had. Sure. For the prosecution or defense? Okay.
I'd like to argue the fact that the Jedi Order had changed by the beginning of the Clone Wars to not what it originally was. So previously it had been said that they did have like a 10,000 years of peace or something. But that changed, and I think a big factor of that is Ahsoka. She says that the Jedi are supposed to be peace bringers, but all she has ever been was a soldier. So she didn't learn how to bring peace to the galaxy.
Okay. And you have one? Prosecution or defense?
The defense.
sorry if you can't understand me. I have a speech impediment, so you might hear mumbles. The main point is, instead of the disbandment, we should bring radical change. The Jedi are very powerful individuals. They have the ability to manipulate the Force, which is everything, life force, all that fun stuff. If we disband them, all these Jedis are gonna go and they're gonna do their own thing, because this is their first sight of freedom in a very long time. As you said, we steal them as babies, which is not a good policy. Should be part of a radical change. But they do not know freedom. They don't. And so they're gonna go do a lot of things they've always wanted to do. And as we said, that we have they like to go to the dark side, because the dark side is freedom, and it gives them power, and blah, blah, blah. But the thing about the Jedi Order is it is managed specifically, and it is held together, not together, but it's, what's the word? Overseen by the Senate. And the people of the Senate, who are many, many worlds and galaxies, oversee them, and they decide, hey, we're gonna allow you to do this. But without the order, there's no one to oversee all these people. There's no one to say, hey, we shouldn't do this, or hey, we should go over here to save peace. They're just gonna do whatever they want. So instead, we should bring radical change. We should think to ourselves, hey, are all of these really strict policies necessary? As you know, when you bring really, really strong regulations against people, they feel trapped and they start to fight back, which causes negative outcomes. So instead of disbanding, I think we should just think. We should think, oh, do we need all these rules, or is there exceptions to these rules? Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. All right. Any questions at this point from our judges? Any clarification? Okay. You have one?
Oh, no question. Prosecution?
Yes. Okay. Come on. So you said you're for the prosecution?
Yeah, I can't believe it. So this is my first time up on anything, but if the Jedi Order was all about balance, going outside of the balance, 10,000 years of peace, supposedly, is not balance. Trying to control the balance in their favor is still not what they're preaching. They're not practicing what they preach. So I think that it is them taking the law into their own hands and trying to misconstrue their own scriptures, for better words.
So can you provide some more perspective of when you say that they're not practicing what they preach? Like an example?
Timeline example, probably not. Overall, during the entire lore, it's the good guys versus the bad guys, supposedly. And it's always trying to, with the exception of the Empire, but that's outside of the Clone War timeline. No, I can't.
No worries. Well, hopefully someone in the...
But the balance just seems to be off.
Gotcha.
If you're preaching balance, you're not, the dark side should have, I wouldn't say more favorable action, but an even playing.
Gotcha. So you're saying that the Jedi Order, in the fact that they exist at all, is tilting the scales towards them, as
Correct.
opposed to the balance that they purport to be about.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay.
I love both floors, just so you know.
Gotcha. All right. Any other details you think should be added, Clark, or do you think that's fair enough?
There are several examples. So the Sith being the largest one, the Jedi cannot allow for the coexistence of any other group of Force users. They are antagonistic against them.
When you say they cannot,
They do not.
Okay.
It's. I'm not aware of any particular law, but even as something as recent as the Acolyte, there were Force users on this planet, and the Jedi came in and said, "You can't do that."
So to add to that, part of them taking younglings as young as they are it disallows other cultures to be able to provide their own kind of lore and identity and connection with the Force. So that's kind of what Harrison is saying, where they do not or do not allow other cultures, because without their Force sensitive younglings, how do they develop a culture around Force sensitivity when all of their Force capable people are taken from them at a young age? Alrighty. Anyone? What time check? Let's see. Okay. Maybe like another 10 minutes or so for arguments. Okay. All right, we got you there in the back. I think I tangled our microphone cord. Sorry, let me try to see if I can. I think I got it. All right, sorry about that. Prosecution or defense?
For the defense.
Okay.
So I'd like to bring up an earlier point of Jedi defecting from the Order, and I'd like to bring up the fact that this only happened during the Clone Wars, and that beforehand we had no defectors from the Jedi Order. And this is mostly due to the fact that war naturally brings negative emotions, especially to people who are just now joining the Jedi Order, children, and just young people in general who've only lived through fighting and slavery. Anakin was young when he joined the Jedi Order, and then was immediately thrown into the Clone Wars, so obviously he was never able to truly process his own emotions. Obi-Wan was very young and joined the Jedi Order before the Clone Wars, but also mostly he knew only rebelliousness and fighting. And then Ahsoka was immediately thrown into the Clone Wars, and as she said before, only knew to be a soldier. So I do not believe that bringing up that would be a valid argument.
Okay. So you are arguing that it should be stricken from the record? I think we have some input from our court clerk.
There have been examples
of Jedi. It is true that they only tend to leave during wartime, but there are many examples of Jedi defecting. I mean, Revan is the biggest one. That's canon again. They're canon again. But I know, right? Yes, like there have been defections. Yes, so like Revan left because I think it was like 8,000 years before. He left because he was forced to prosecute a war that he didn't believe was just. So he tried to find a power to counter the spread of the Mandalorians. He was technically successful, but ended up falling to the dark side as a result. That one counts. I'm not going to count the Sith themselves because they were kicked out. They didn't defect on their own. They were told, get out of Dodge. So
I was going to bring up Dooku, but Dooku falls under your point because when the beginning of his defection is he was still Qui-Gon's master at the time when he went to that planet. So technically that is wartime as well. So I would say that the argument can be kept, but it has to be within context of understanding that even though it isn't always in wartime, there are, because your point as well, you said that they were forced to prosecute a war, right, Revan? So that's technically still to his point, a war, right? Okay, so at this point, I would say that it kind of does have to be, I feel like his point does kind of stand. Just remember the full context of it, but yeah, I think the point stands, yeah. All right, so we've got two there, so I'll have you since you haven't spoken up first, and then you since you haven't had a chance to speak up, and then you again. Okay. No worries. Okay, are you for the prosecution or defense?
I'm on the side of the prosecution.
Okay, for prosecution?
Yes. So, I would like to call into action call into appearance the actions of Admiral, I think, Ki-Adi-Mundi? How do you pronounce it? Ki-Adi-Mundi was not particularly the best Jedi. His actions did not reflect any of the values that they try and reflect at all. With one, the implementation of flamethrowers into his troops, that violates a few conventions, I think, as well as his mistreatment of his clones during the Clone Wars.
So you're saying that he used flamethrowers against the clones during the Clone Wars? Is that what is that? Okay, gotcha.
So I think this kind of reflects something deeper inside of a Jedi that has to be morally correct. So that doesn't really mean that defecting Jedis accounts for the entirety of evil within the Jedi Order. That's about all I have to say. Starkiller is great.
Thank you for your answer. All right, I forgot who was next. I think it was, were you next? Okay. And then you in the back with the glasses. Okay, so for prosecution or defense?
I'm in prosecution.
Okay.
So, I think that the way that they're like really like creating the clones is really like inhumane, and that they're not really treating them as if they're like really like real people, and that they're just like kind of just like creating them just for them to die later, and that they're not really like treating them really well, and because they're born like this, they've been like, it's kind of like slavery. And the fact that even in like the places where the I just forget what the name, not the.
Well, we got a fact checker.
Yeah, wait. It was not the Jedi Order, but the people they're fighting, like the.
Oh, the separatists. Yeah.
Like yeah, I feel like in the places that they're in like power, that they're like ruling, I feel like even though they might be really strict about it, they're like actually they're doing what they're saying more than what the Jedi are doing than what they're saying. So I feel like they're actually kind of putting order, even if they're strict about it, they're definitely, doing what they say that they're going to do a lot more than the Jedi.
So your point is that in creation of the clones themselves, they are kind of going against some of the values that they espouse to value life. Yeah, and to provide evidence to that, several clones during the Clone Wars expressed that exact sentiment, that they didn't feel that they were treated as human, that they felt disposable.
Also, in the creation of the clones,
the Comicons who created the clones actually altered the genetic code to make them more docile and obedient. Like that's a thing that they did.
All right, so we got the 5-minute warning. So I think we had one or two more hands. We'll get to those very quickly, and then we have to have our judges make their ruling. Okay, so we had one that had his hand up, you in the back, and then you.
Were the clones created by the separatists?
So her point is that the clones were.
Didn't one like disappear?
that's technically true.
And then like
Because
in a
Dooku orchestrated the posing as
So her general point is that the clones were technically created by the separatists, but in defense of his point as well, they were. I don't think, unless you have other evidence to add to that, I don't think that negates his point, because his point is how they were treated under the command of the Jedi Order. So I agree, the part where he said that they were created by, that part does need to be stricken. Would you agree?
I do, but it does negate my previous point, because about how they are created and lessening their inhibitions, because the Jedi had no role in the original creation of them. It was Dooku Dooku had to pose as a different Jedi, Sifo-Dyas, in order to get them. So when Obi-Wan comes upon the clones, they're made as they are, as the Comicons were instructed to make them. So it wasn't the Jedi. It wasn't on the orders of the Jedi.
So, yeah, I will say that again, another one that needs to be in context, because even though her point is correct, they didn't create them in that way. They were under their command, and if I'm not mistaken, they were aware of that fact. They were aware that they were genetically modified to be more docile during war, and that may have even potentially led to how they responded to them and how they treated them. So even though they didn't create them, the Jedi were aware of that fact. Okay, all right. So our next ones, we have to be very quick because we got to get our judges at least till 12:50. They're saying they need at least several minutes to deliberate. So if you can be really quick, in the back you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm not a Star Wars fan, but my major is related to law, so I thought of this. Is there any outline, like the Geneva Convention in Star Wars, that lays out what war crimes are? Because if not, then everything that's been brought up is just issues of morality, which don't fall under legal cases.
After the Mandalorian Wars, the galaxy agreed to a set of rules. The problem with that is that the Separatists don't recognize the authority of the Senate. So within the Galactic Senate and the Republic itself, there are rules, but whether or not those technically apply to individual planets, that's kind of what the Separatists are fighting against.
And I think we had one other comment in the back. Okay, so do we have any others? Because otherwise he's good. So we got two more, and then those will be the last two. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it real quick.
Okay, stand up and speak loudly, please.
I kind of just have an objection to the point that all the Jedi defected during the Clone Wars. I don't want to spoil anything, but in the Acolyte there is a Sith who defected prior to the Clone Wars because it takes place about 100 years before the Clone Wars. So.
That is true, and that's fair, and we do not yet know the full extent of why he defected. So we don't have full evidence to say whether or not it is for or against that claim. So that is true. Okay. Gotcha. And then the last comment in the back.
Yeah, as the voice unbiased person in the room, a clear, objective.
So the judges are asking if you can come up because they can't hear you through the mask.
Happens all the time, don't worry.
Use force.
I gotta say, that cape is badass. It's blowing in the wind. I love it.
So like I said, as the most unbiased person in the room, I can give a clear, objective opinion. So the Jedi Order is built on religious abandonment. It's a religion where you are taken from your family and told you cannot interact with them, you cannot love them, you cannot go help them with your newfound powers that you've been trained to use. You must abandon everything and join us. You have no choice. You can't go back to them, you can't leave this life unless you're kicked out, and then you'll become a Sith, most likely. Good choice, by the way. But there is, there's a ton of hubris to talk about, but I'll leave it short. Anakin Skywalker was saved from slavery and had to watch his mother die in his arms because he was not allowed to go back and save her. That was Yoda's fault, by the way. Thanks, Yoda. But it's all religious abandonment. If you want to have a family, you can't. And that's the end of it.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our lawyers who participated. We are going to give our counsel 5 minutes. Is that good? To deliberate and then make their judgment. All right. Oh my gosh, that was amazing, you guys. I was telling Harrison I was very nervous that people weren't going to speak up. Once you guys got going, you had great points on all counts. So I really appreciate everyone who did participate, who added to the conversation. And so while our judges are deliberating, I wanted to just tell you guys a little bit about an initiative that we are launching through Color of Fandom. So one of our administrators, Amy Deletry, was a critical part of our organization, and she passed away earlier this year. She had been diagnosed with epilepsy in 2016, so that impacted the way that she could engage with fandom and be able to attend conventions. So as you know from what we stated in the beginning, our group exists as a place for people with marginalized identities to be able to share how that identity impacts their fandom and how their fandom impacts their identity. And disability is a marginalized identity currently in our country. So Amy didn't let that slow her down. She made sure that she rallied around her community. She rallied her community together, and she would help us to be able to make sure that we could provide the space for her to be able to still be a part of the fandoms that she loved, that she could still maintain the relationships that she loved that were so important to her, and how she was important to us. So we've launched an initiative called Amy's TARDIS that we are using to try to help fans with disabilities be able to attend conventions. So NC Comicon was our first sponsor here for 2024. We had the game table yesterday. Hopefully some of you guys were able to come by and visit that. But we'll talk a little bit more as well about, at the end, about Amy's TARDIS, but I think our judges have come to a decision.
Okay, so we have come to a decision. We have a two-part decision.
Okay, and you're going to give us details on why you came to that?
Kind of. First of all, we thought all of the arguments were awesome, the arguments for both sides. There were some that really impacted us a little bit more than others. We are ruling in favor of keeping the Jedi Order together. But we're also adding the aspect that one of our lawyers brought up, with there being radical change in the Jedi Order, and perhaps creating a committee that may have one Jedi member on it, but other members, we didn't go into detail about that because we didn't have time, but that is where we are. We heard a lot about individual Jedi, but not so much about the Order in itself being corrupt, or doing a lot of things in mass, and so I think that is what sort of brought us to this decision.
Gotcha. Okay, so to summarize, you're saying that the actions of the individual inform what the organization, how they should make change. And so your ruling is that in order to be able to maintain their status, they need to come up with maybe like an oversight committee that has people who are not force sensitive and who exist outside of the order. They can have their own singular representative on that council, but they will be responsible to this committee of non-force users to determine how that change, what that change should be and how that change should be implemented. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, right.
Okay. And okay, and part of it is that they have regular check-ins with the committee to make sure that they are maintaining that. Okay? All right, awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you to our judges. Thank you so much to everyone who